Hello everyone, and welcome to a new intermediate Python tutorial video on the Future Programmer YouTube channel. Today, we're going to learn what is perhaps my favorite Python feature called fstring, a way of simplifying readability when concatenating strings and variables. Without further ado, let's get started. String concatenation, something that you have probably done many times before, and something that you will continue to do over and over again as you continue programming. In Python, we usually combine strings using the plus sign, like in this program right here. We have a string combined with a variable, and another string, another variable, another string, and another variable. This code works, but it's very hard to read. So there are a few old school ways of simplifying string formatting in Python, which do make code slightly easier to read. So here we have a variable called language equal to a value of Python, and here we use percent formatting to put Python in here instead of the %s. So when the program runs, this print statement will print out I love Python. So we're taking this value and putting it in here, or Python is doing that. And here we're using the .format method of strings to put language inside of this string to replace the curly brackets when this program runs. So both lines would print out I love Python. Now, these are great, but this is not the topic of today's video because there is another way of simplifying string formatting that is a lot simpler and easier to read, and that is f-strings. The feature of f-strings were introduced in Python 3.6, so if you're using any version after that, then you can definitely use f-strings. If you have a version older than 3.6, you should consider upgrading to a newer version probably. So f-strings are used to make string formatting a lot more readable, shorter, and also faster in speed, both in writing the code and also in program execution. So here we have a language variable equal to the value of Python. And here we're using f-strings to print out I love Python. So notice how this string has a letter F before the starting quotation mark. That is denoting that this is an F string. So inside of here, we can put curly brackets, and inside of which we can put variable names or expressions. So here, if I run this program, we'll see I love Python. So here, instead of the language, Python will look for the language variable and see what is the value stored inside of it and insert Python in the place of this expression. Now we can also put expressions into the curly brackets, like for example, function calls. So here we have a value of x, that's 1, or a variable of x, that's 1, a variable y, that is 2. So if I use f-strings to print out the larger number between x, that's the value of x, so it will be 1 when it prints out. And then the value of y, so that's going to be 2 when this prints out. And then here we are having another expression, max x, y. So this is printing out the maximum value between x and y. And that's going to be 2. So we will see the larger number between 1 and 2 is 2, as you can see here. Notice how before, if we have a variable that is an int or a float, we will need to convert that into a string before we can combine it to other strings. Now, f-strings also solves that problem because even though 1 and 2, these are both int values, we can put them directly inside of curly brackets, and Python will do the conversion to strings automatically. Now, we can also use f-strings to debug, and while it's always a good idea to use a debugger to find problems in your program, it's very common and sometimes simpler to print out a variable to debug a program. You've probably used these kinds of print statements in your programs before. So we have a variable equal to a value, and then we print out my variable, that's the name of the variable, is equal to, and then we have the value of my variable converted into a string. So this will print out my variable is 1. F-strings make this a lot easier for us. Here's how we can do this. We have the same variable equal to 1, and here we have print, and then we have an f string. Inside of here, we can see we just have one expression, one curly bracket, and then it says my variable equals. So what this is going to print out is going to print out my variable is equal to 1. If you're like me and you want spaces around your equal sign, you can just put spaces around here and we'll see my variable is equal to 1. Or you can keep it like this, or you can put many spaces and there will be more spaces around your equal sign. But let's just keep it like this for now. We can also see the length of a list, for instance. We can put it inside of here. A value is equal to, and we will see the length of a list is equal to 3. So we have 3 elements inside of this list. So this is a really easy and simple way for us to see the name of a variable as well as its value when we want to debug our program, as well as to see some value as well as the expression for a certain expression like this. So we want to see what is the length of a list. And we can do this using f strings like this. Now keep in mind that f strings are just like other strings. F strings are strings after all. So we can not only use f strings to print things out, we can also use f strings in other places where we would normally use strings. We can pass it into function calls. We can call string methods on f strings and so on. So here we have a function, compare string length, x and y. So we pass in 2 strings and we check, we'll return the value equal if the length of x is equal to the length of y. Otherwise, we'll return not equal. So this is using the ternary operator that we discussed in the last intermediate Python video. So if you don't know what this is doing, feel free to check that video out. And here we have 2 variables, action and a. Both of the words subscribe, just one in uppercase and one in lowercase and one in uppercase. We can pass in 2 strings into compare string length using f strings. So we have the f string you should subscribe and the f string you should subscribe in capital letters. And we will see it will print out equal like this. So f strings are awesome, so you don't have to write 20 character long string concatenation code with plus signs anymore. In my opinion, f strings is really one of the best things about the Python programming language, and I hope that after this video, you would think so as well. With that said, if you found this video to be helpful, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them in the comments section. Lastly, thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in more tutorials.